Hello and welcome to Kirtan London Journey to Joy podcast, episode number I don't know, with our special guest once again, Acyuta Gopi, who's coming to discuss with us chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita. We are moving through it slowly but surely, and today we're going to be starting text 10 of chapter 8. So I'm very excited. Last episode that we did was absolutely amazing. Some of you may have missed it because we ended up doing it live on Acyuta's YouTube channel rather than Kirtan London due to a technical error, which we won't talk about. So if you want to see that episode, if you missed it, go back and check it out. It was a really gem of an episode. A lot of cool stuff in that. So as always as well, we're going to start with our invocation mantras. And for that, I'm going to pass it over to Acyuta.
Sure. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Beautiful, Jai. Welcome back, Acyuta.
So glad to be here as always.
Yes, a pleasure to have you as always. So we're starting text 10 today. Maybe I'll just briefly recap some of the things we spoke about last week. We spoke a lot about this term inconceivable, Krishna's inconceivability. We spoke a lot about that. There was a quote that hit home so beautiful. I'm sure you remember the one by the Sufi poet.
Yeah.
Two buckets, one of water and one of fire, one to wash out the fires of hell and the other to burn down heaven so that we might pray simply. This idea of removing all profit and gain or fear of loss and then just heartfelt prayer. Beautiful quote that was shared. And Krishna's awesomeness, really. There was a lot of stuff that came out. Yeah. So we're on text 10 today, unless you had any thoughts that you wanted to pick up from last time, Acyuta?
Just that, like you said, Krishna's inconceivability knows no bounds. And I feel like this entire Bhagavad Gita is an exploration in not just how inconceivable Krishna is, but how inconceivably kind. He's so just inconceivably sweet at every moment. So yeah, text 10, we get to get into the nitty gritty of things in the workings of the universe and the soul and etc. But once again, we're also about to find out like how nice Krishna is as a person.
I feel like text 10 has been a long time coming in this chapter because for me, chapter 8, a large part of chapter 8 is the idea of life after death. And so now I kept titling each of our episodes Life After Death, thinking that that's what we were going to talk about at some point. And then we never quite made it there. And so if people have watched some of the episodes and they're thinking, I don't get the title. What did they talk about in the end? I think we're going to start finally getting to this point, which is great. Do you want to, I'd love to pass it to you.
Sure.
To kick us off, to read it out and kick us off.
Like, I think the idea of life after death is less, okay, what's going to happen? And more, how? Like, it's like, it's that question where you're kind of, you ever get a kid who's like thinking about the afterlife or death or anything transient like that. And the first question they ask is, will it hurt? And as an adult, you're like, what do I say
Right.
to this small mind, this tiny person? What do I say? And so I feel like those questions are more geared to like, okay, but am I going to be safe? Is it going to be okay? How do I make this as painless a process as possible?
Yeah.
If we think about it, everybody's trying to avoid pain in some way, shape, or form. Mental pain, emotional pain, physical pain. Like everybody's trying to avoid. So I really feel like a lot of this is like, how do I make this as smooth and painless as possible? And so some of that has to do with what happens after you die. Where do you go? What's the attainment? But also it's still a lot about us trying to get our senses and our desires met. It's really so little about like, oh, but like, do I get to eternally serve my supreme friend? A lot of it for a lot, at least speaking from my experience, for most of my life, and even still, a lot of it is more about like, am I going to be okay? And even if, you have a good place and a bad place, am I going to the good place? Because there's enjoyment. Like a lot of it is about like, how do I still get my desires met, even after this process that has to happen to everybody? Is it going to be okay? And I feel like Krishna is now kind of like breaking things down for Arjuna. And what I really love about Krishna is that he doesn't expect people to be desireless. So, we'll get into it, but I kind of like that he doesn't expect people to be desireless because I think he knows. He's like, yeah, I'm myself, I'm not desireless. Like, how could I'm not going to create all of these living entities without desires. They're going to have desires and they're going to want those desires to be met. So I think Krishna is kind of a master at two birds, one stone. Or, I feel like I need an ahimsa analogy for killing two birds with one stone, because it kind of sounds like, what did the birds ever do to anybody?
Is there an ahimsa analogy for that? I have to think about it.
Yeah,
sure.
I need.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. I love your explanation of where does this fear of death come from? And essentially you gave the clue to how can we overcome that as well. And then, which was very cool, a very nice summary and very accurate, on the mark with why this is an important topic to discuss as well.
Yeah. So text 10.
Yeah.
One who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This purport is also kind of cool. In this verse, it is clearly stated that at the time of death, the mind must be fixed in devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows to the Agya Chakra. The practice of Sat Chakra Yoga involving meditation on the 6 chakras is suggested here. A pure devotee does not practice such yoga, but because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, at death he can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his grace. This is explained in verse 14. The particular use of the word yoga balena is significant in this verse because without practice of yoga, whether Sat Chakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendence through yoga during one's life. So now we have this whole yoga system summed up in like one verse. Like, Krishna's like, well, if you're asking, how does one attain the Supreme? Well, for some, you simply, like it's almost like it's like matter of fact the way he says it. Simply just raise your life force between your eyebrows.
Right.
And yeah, undeviatingly fix your mind on the Supreme, and then it's fine. You're good.
Yeah. This is one of those texts that really highlights the importance of Prabhupada's translations, purports rather, because there are some texts which, without an explanation and some kind of explanation as to the flow, because sometimes Krishna says things and we think, oh, God is saying something. This must be all ultimate truth, this exact quote. But Krishna doesn't necessarily, from my experience, from what I can see of the scripture that I've read and the explanations, it's not necessarily like that. Krishna was freaking cool and he spoke like a cool dude. So sometimes he would speak almost not in riddles, but he would sometimes speak in riddles, or he would sometimes make certain points to build up to a overriding point.
Yeah.
And so you can get lost in those build-up points sometimes.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that about Bhagavad Gita. And I think until I just, like, at a certain point, I started reading an entire chapter, but just the translation of an entire chapter, and just trying to get a feel for what's Krishna talking about? How is he going about this conversation? Because it's supposed to be a conversation. And when I started doing that, it kind of changed things for me drastically, which of course would not have happened without his specific translation, because his specific translation is so different from so many other translations. But you've got these heavy scientific terms. You've got these really huge, like you've got a whole Sat Chakra yoga system, right? And then, but Srila Prabhupada's like, wait, just let him finish, because verse 14, because right now you're like, raise your life force. Who does that besides like Sati? Like, I didn't hear about that since like fourth canto of Bhagavatam. Like, nobody's doing that, like, and I can almost see like Arjuna, like this freak out is arising. Like, he's like, I've practiced a lot of things in my life. Most of them were to get weapons. Like, what am I? I'm part
lost.
of this,
I'm done. Can't do this. Can't do it. Sorry,
right.
Krishna. Done.
So, and part of this is also because he's like, at the beginning, he's like, well, I could just go to the forest and be a yogi. He's like, okay, you really want to know what they have to do in order to get the same result that I'm about to break down for you? They've got to go through years of yogic practice and austerity and tapasya with fancy words. They've got to like sit with eyes half closed, meditated on the tip of the nose, and raise the life force. Yeah. First, you've got to like figure out how to work your life force, okay, in order to like raise it or lower it. Because how many of us can do that at will? So, but then, after you've done all of that, then you raise your life force to between the eyebrows, and then you can control how, when, where your soul leaves your body. Yeah. And I can just like, I just know this warrior who's having this like panic attack on this battlefield. It's like, what are you saying? And why are you saying
you can picture Arjuna's face looking at Krishna in this moment.
Okay. Yeah. And he's already said, he's like, in order to like with undeviating attention, controlling the mind fully, he's like, but to control the mind is harder than controlling the wind. He's like, and I'm the greatest archer ever. He's like, absolutely, you're correct. He's like, what am I supposed to do? And I love it because you've got like big terms. And just before, like you said, just before you feel like my brain's going to explode, if you give me one more big term, Krishna simplifies everything. It's like it's like he shows this huge truth, and then he takes it all back. He's like, or. Yeah. And for one who like, it's like, or for one who remembers me always, the process is easy. And he says it so many times, like easily attained, easy. It's easy. Yeah.
This is the essence of Bhakti Yoga in one sense, and you've just summarized it in a nutshell. It's what's the word? It's the easy version. When you anyway, I forget the word, but essentially that's it. There's so many ways of trying to achieve spiritual enlightenment, maybe you can call it that, or spiritual paths aiming with happiness or liberation or whatever it might be, most of them are really hard. And this is what we're seeing here. Krishna is explaining how these typical processes work. But Bhakti Yoga is constantly explained, constantly, over and over again. This is easy. And this will give you the highest result. Do this, just do this, just do this. It's simple, it's simple, it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
You said it really nicely. Okay.
And, you know, because I love the way this is moving. Yeah, I'm like, we could go to the next one.
Yeah.
Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has recommended to Arjuna the practice of Sat Chakra Yoga, in which one places the air of life between the eyebrows. Taking it for granted that Arjuna might not know how to practice Sat Chakra Yoga, the Lord explains the process in the following verses. The Lord says that Brahman, although one without a second, has various manifestations and features. Especially for the impersonalists, the Akshara, or Omkar, the syllable Om, is identical with Brahman. Krishna here explains the impersonal Brahman into which the renounced order of sages enter. In the Vedic system of knowledge, students from the very beginning are taught to vibrate Om and learn of the ultimate impersonal Brahman by living with the spiritual master in complete celibacy. In this way, they realize two of Brahman's features. This practice is very essential for the student's advancement in spiritual life, but at the moment, such brahmachari, unmarried celibate life is not at all possible. The social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one's practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. Throughout the world, there are many institutions for different departments of knowledge, but there is no recognized institution where students can be educated in the brahmachari principles. Unless one practices celibacy, advancement in spiritual life is very difficult. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has announced, according to the scriptural injunctions for this age of Kali, that in this age, no process of realizing the Supreme is possible except the chanting of the holy names of Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This I thought was really cool. Once again,
it's really
like,
cool.
Yeah, it's building off of like, okay, big Sat Chakra Yoga. How do you even get to the point where you can raise your life force into, well, part of this tapasya is this intense celibate life. And, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with Mahabharata. But fun fact, Arjuna went on pilgrimage for some years due to a misunderstanding that happened between the brothers and their wife, Draupadi. So he has to go on pilgrimage for a little while. The stipulation is that he's supposed to remain celibate during that time. And it's really not long until he enters into a kingdom and there's a princess and she's like, hey, you're handsome, quite capable, worthy, strong. We should get married. It's like, let alone getting married. I'm supposed to be completely celibate. Like, I'm not even supposed. She's like, but also your duty as a warrior is to give protection to ladies if they come under your shelter. And so here I am. So, I'm just thinking that maybe you should do your greater duty. And so then he marries that princess and another princess and another princess and princesses from different species, princesses from different countries and races. And he makes so many political alliances. And that was just a small fraction of time where he was supposed to be celibate. And it was like, it went right out the window. It's like, that was the first thing to go. And I can only imagine, he's like, you've got this strict celibate life. And Krishna is so mischievous. He knows who his friend is. He knows who his best friend is. So I can only imagine he's like looking at him. He's like, great saints and sages. They practice this celibate life. He's like looking at his friend like, what do you think? How do you feel about it? He's like, it's like, seems like it's already done. It's already a done deal. I don't know. What am I supposed to do about this?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not necessary in today's day and age.
Yeah.
Not that it's not helpful, which is another interesting consideration. But it's just that there's a reality of the world that we live in. And what's beautiful about Krishna consciousness and bhakti yoga is that it's for everyone, and there's no loss. It's the most wonderful process that you can do. It's not just because we're struggling here with whatever it might be, sex desire, celibacy, and not understanding our life force, having no idea what the life force is, never mind being able to raise it to our head. I can't even do downward dog, never mind do yoga.
Right.
Can't touch my toes for Krishna's sake. Right? So it's going to be challenging for most people, but I know that doesn't in any way, shape, or form remove me from the chance of pursuing the ultimate goal of life through Krishna consciousness, which is so simple. So simple.
Yeah. And that's what I love about it. Like you said, none of those things are like disqualifiers. They don't remove you from the chance of being able to progress on the path of spiritual realization.
Yeah.
And I love that about Krishna. Krishna knows already. Like, it's not like, he's this rigid, everything is fixed. There is no workaround. He's the king of loopholes. He's going to figure out a way. Like, he's going to try and find out. Like, he's like, well, you could go to the forest and do the whole Brahman realization thing. But if we look closely, right? And I'm sure this has already been established, there are 3 features to the absolute truth.
Right.
But here, if you look in the purport, Srila Prabhupada cleverly states that those sages who go with impersonal Brahman realization, they attain only 2. Only 2.
Oh.
And so I was like, interesting. That he snuck that in there. If we look close, there's one missing, which is the most personal feature of that supreme person. And as that supreme person is standing right in front of Arjuna explaining this whole thing, it's like you could go off into the forest, you could give up being a warrior, you could do all these things. You've gone on pilgrimage before in the guise of a Brahmin. Did it work out? Like, he's like, how did all your austerities work out before? Like, we have practical living evidence.
I missed that sentence. Prabhupada snuck that in there, huh?
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that's really a great observation. I really appreciate that. It's a fantastic observation. So interesting. Just as well, what's interesting is when you were reading the purport, there were things that I missed clearly. So this sentence I missed. There was another sentence towards the bottom that I missed as well. But I felt it naturally. I almost said it, and then I thought, don't say it because it might be a digression. But I was thinking to myself when I was saying how we're so fortunate with this process that we have, that it might be a good time to introduce Lord Chaitanya. And there we go. And then I looked back at the purport and I said, oh, Prabhupada actually says, therefore, Lord Chaitanya has announced. I just missed it. Right. So actually, it is a good time to introduce this idea, which I was going to say, this is why I appreciate Gaur Nitai or Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda so much, because I get both sides of the coin. I understand that to achieve the perfection of life, it must be no easy feat. It's the perfection of life. I'm struggling to achieve so many things in this mundane material realm in my own small itty bitty little life that I'm struggling to do. How can I expect to be able to achieve the highest perfection of life, eternal loving relationship with God? So I get the difficulty of this goal, but at the same time, despite the ultimate elevation of this relationship with God, we're given full access to it at the same time, which also makes sense to me. Because how can God be all loving if we didn't have access to it? Obviously, we have to choose to take it, but to have access to it in a way which is doable for us as well. It's not like saying, here you go, you can do it, but it's actually impossible. You ain't never going to do it. Like this whole raising the chakras or whatever it is. Realistically, there are very difficult things which are realistically never going to happen, but this process is realistic. And so therefore it makes sense to me as well that despite the thing that we're going for being so in one sense difficult, that it's been made available to us nonetheless because of how much Krishna loves us. And so he comes in the form as Gaura Nitai or Gauranga Nityananda or Chaitanya Nityananda and gives it to us basically. Here you go. Take it.
It's wholesale. It's like, Costco of love of God. Here you go.
Costco.
Yeah.
Oh, Krishna.
Buy it in bulk. Get as much as you can.
Costco. And, going out of business sale. Take everything.
Right. Yeah. And what I really enjoy is that and you can't even call it like an avatar, because avatar starts to imply that Krishna has taken a certain form or etc. And I feel like Lord Chaitanya is more of a manifestation. Really just a manifestation of the love of Radha Krishna combined, just on steroids, like to the max. And Srila Prabhupada aptly, like in the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's an intro, and in order to introduce Srimad Bhagavatam, he introduces Lord Chaitanya for like 40 pages. And one of the first things he says is he calls him the great apostle of love of God. And that stuck with me so much that I was like, no, that's it. That's what I'm calling him from now on. Like the great apostle of love of God. I was like, oh, Srila Prabhupada, I see you with the poetry and the words. I see you.
Oof.
Super nice. Yeah. So the trajectory of this manifestation of all the love of God is, ultimately one of these external reasons. He says, Bhagavad Gita, spoiler alert, one of the things Krishna says the most is abandon all varieties of everything and just surrender unto me. It's like, don't worry, I got you. And then Krishna goes back to the drawing board and he thinks, well, yeah, sure, I said that, but I didn't give anybody like a map of what that looks like. I didn't give a blueprint. And what I like about Krishna is he's like, well, I'm not just going to let them flounder without giving them a blueprint of what that looks like. So I guess I got to be the blueprint.
Yeah,
I guess I got to be the devotee. And so he decides to take on this manifestation of God as a devotee, falling in love with the Supreme. And because everything he does is inconceivable and extra and over the top, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to be over the top, inconceivable, and all the way extra.
Let me take this opportunity to do two things. I just want to acknowledge a few people in the comments. Thank you for joining us. People have been saying hello since the start. So we've got James Buckingham, Leeleshwari, Raphael, and Samir. Samir's been saying some really nice comments here. Lots of nice comments. Thank you, Samir, for your engagement. Lots of beautiful. He said a lot, actually. It would be tough to read it all out, but he's been making some nice comments throughout. So nice to see you, Samir. And then back to this point about Lord Chaitanya. I really like how you explained it, or how Prabhupada puts it. An apostle, how does he word it?
The apostle of love of God.
The apostle of love of God. It sounds so beautiful. What is the exact understanding of this word apostle?
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's see.
Because it sounds so beautiful. The apostle of love of God. Google.
Right? To the internet. So
Oh, okay. Each of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ. That's one.
Yeah, so usually it's kind of just like a religious teacher, but I love words, and I love the way like words kind of a spreader of faith.
Yeah. A vigorous and pioneering advocate or supporter of a particular policy, idea, or cause. Okay.
A vigorous pioneer. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. You are a wordsmith yourself. By the way, if you don't know, you might know, you may not know, but Acyuta is an author of an incredible book, a book of poems all about love of God, about her relationship with her spiritual life and with God. Maybe you can say more about it.
There's poems, there's meditations, there's short stories, and it kind of follows the blueprint of another, like Bhakti Tirtha Swami was one of my favorite modern day saints. And he had a series called The Beggar. And he would write poems and meditations. And it was almost like you get a look into his journals, you know? And so I kind of, inspired by that, it kind of took on a life of its own. And also because I love telling stories and finding fun things and little purports and finding details and getting to I love details. And sometimes I feel like if you were to write every detail out of a story, the book would be thousands of pages long. So sometimes what happens is these short stories wind up being snapshots. It's like just a snapshot, like moments that wind up changing the course of an entire situation. So because I love being able to do that, and it's become a spiritual meditation for me in and of itself, I compiled them into a book called Pramamala. It's a garland of love, all dedicated to my supreme best friend.
Such a legend, Acyuta. Such a freaking legend.
Thank you.
No, really.
It won an award.
It won an award?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Indie Book Awards, it won an award for the genre of spirituality. And these are not devotees at all, just regular people. So I felt like
incredible.
It was, yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. These things sometimes surprise me. Just I'm struggling for words today. My upbringing I just have this innate sense of surprise sometimes initially when other people are interested in what I'm interested in Krishna consciousness, essentially, because I grew up with it being so niche in my own little world. We were a small community. The majority of the world didn't even know what it was or weren't really interested. And so now, as I get older, I'm starting to see this is changing. I'm starting to see, oh my, people are interested in this, and people can appreciate it, and people like Kirtan is blown up, and different Vaishnava spiritual literatures are being read by people who I never would have thought were reading them. And so when I initially hear something like this, that your book, which is your personal relationship with the divine from, you could say, from the Vaishnav perspective, won an award in a completely secular realm, there's an initial surprise element. Really? Wow, really? But it doesn't surprise me, actually, when I think about it.
I
Because
was
you're
also
awesome.
surprised.
You're awesome. And of course it was going to win an award. Of course. And I mean that sincerely. You just have to open your eyes, look at it, and realize its epicness. And I love it that that has happened. That's so cool.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I also, when it happened, I was also surprised. I was just kind of, you do the best you can, and it really puts you into you do your duty and then try and become detached from the results.
Yeah.
Which, again, easier said than done, Krishna. He says a lot of things in Bhagavad Gita, which are easier said than done.
Oh my God, tell me about it.
Right? Yeah. So, this do your duty, but be detached from the results. I'm like, I'm sure you know how difficult that is. And my brother and I have had loads
I'm
of
so goddamn
conversations about
attached.
it.
Sorry?
Yeah, like me and my brother have had loads of conversations about this, and he, Ananta's, he's always like, but that's exactly what Krishna has to do. He does his duty, which is he sets up all the jivas. He gives everybody what they need, gives everybody the things, and then he has to be detached from the results. That's our free will.
Beautiful.
Mind-blowing also, like for him to have that level of detachment where he's like, okay, you do what you got to do, and I'm not going to interfere. And then to really follow through on that as much as we desire. Now, if we desire for him to interfere, then he's so happy to jump in and interfere in our lives.
Interfere, please. I know
Right?
I don't really mean it, but I mean it. And even if I don't mean it, just do it anyway.
I know. Yeah. And
Please.
so like,
Come on.
It's like, these are not just things he's saying to Arjuna. Like he's like, I myself, I got to do things. And sometimes I'm sure he doesn't necessarily like it. Like when they talk about there's two birds sitting in a tree, one bird's eating the fruit, and the other bird is simply watching. I am so sure that his heart is made unhappy by watching so many of his people go through things, have to navigate these pathways. And I'm sure he's like, I could just jump in and say, no, you don't want me to? Okay. And there's so many times we're like, I got it. I'm in control. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to fix it. And I know there are times when he'd so much rather just jump in and swoop down and fix the situation. But unless and until we've desired it, he's reciprocal.
He's reciprocal. He's reciprocal. Getting a few nice comments about your book here, Acyuta. Pramamala, loved it, by Samir. Raphael, you will cry a lot while reading it. Lileshwari said, one of the best books I've read. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
A lot of appreciation. Yeah. Should we keep going?
Yeah, let's go for it. So yeah, we have this situation where, and one of Samir's questions was like, why would Krishna explain all of these like seemingly impossible yogic processes? We've got Sankhya yoga and Jnana yoga and Bhakti yoga, and you get all these karma yoga. Why would he explain all of these other yoga systems when it's nearly impossible to pursue? Well, because he's reciprocal. And Arjuna asked. Like, basically, like, we kind of, in the English, we kind of don't always get it. But if we look at the flow of the Sanskrit, he asks, he's like, but what does a man in transcendence look like? How do they act? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they sit? How do they do all these things? Divine and demoniac nature. He's like, but what is the deal with all this? Like, you've mentioned some things, but how does that work? So he's like looking at his friend. He's like, okay, I got this. Maybe, sure. Maybe you say I can't go to the forest, but what's that like? It's like, okay, well, I can tell you. He's like, well, there are some people who just have transcended by knowing everything. What's that like? It's like, okay, I can tell you. So, Arjuna asks, is the simple answer.
Yeah.
And I feel like Arjuna is also that type of person where at heart, he's like, well, unless I get this explained to me in a way that's fully going to make sense, he doesn't let go. Like he really holds on to that surrender. He doesn't fully surrender. And even after Krishna will explain it and explain it, he's like, now I know you've said the whole you're God thing, and I'm going with it, but let me see one time. Like, until Arjuna gets it in a way that makes sense or completely doesn't make, like, until his mind is blown, he's not going to let go. And I think, at the very end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's like, so now are all of your doubts dispelled? Like, he's like, because unless they are, I'll sit here with you and we'll go through it all again. But, he knows his friend. He knows Arjuna, and Arjuna is not going to just relinquish that surrender. Much like all of us, we are not going to relinquish the surrender until it makes sense to us.
Yes. I actually saw the question. I thought it was a rhetorical question when I saw it. Perhaps it wasn't. And I like your answer, because I hadn't thought of it that way, that he did it because that's another light. Seems to me that's a beautiful light on that question as well. Because the other light, which you said earlier, is this idea of presenting all the things just to say, yeah, but these things are all super difficult, so just do this. And in a way, building up to the bhakti yoga, do bhakti yoga. So that's one side of it. But the other side of it is that Krishna's reciprocal, and Arjuna's asking him a specific question.
Yeah.
And therefore, Krishna's answering the question to his friend, which is great as well. And there's a
that question. One time in a lecture with Radhanath Maharaj, with my Guru Maharaj, somebody asked a similar question, and the chastisement that my Guru Maharaj gave that person was pretty fierce.
Really?
So, yeah. 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 And so here's the thing. The form of Mohini was difficult for even Lord Shiva to comprehend. And he's the greatest of yogis, the greatest of meditators. So I would just say, it's kind of like a buyer beware. that form was made for a specific purpose, to bewilder people. So I would say, try and keep it respectful.
It's interesting, because we hear about, on this point, we hear about even pure devotees. You said Shiva. I'm thinking of another one. So Shiva's a partial incarnation of Krishna.
Right? Yeah.
For heaven's sake, right?
Yeah.
But then we hear about other pure devotees, completely liberated souls, who still see in the material, who can still see with material vision to some degree. So, for example, I'm thinking of Vyasadeva. No, was it Vyasadeva? Yeah, Vyasadeva. So when there were two apsaras, two heavenly damsels bathing in the river, and Shukadeva Goswami, who's Vyasadeva's son, walks past.
And was young, like 16 at the time.
Like a 16-year-old boy guy. And he's stark naked, by the way. There's context to this story, people. Don't be getting ideas. There's genuine context, okay? He was pure devotee. He was completely detached from his own body. So anyway, he walks past, and the ladies didn't jump out, cover themselves up, didn't do anything.
It was like seeing a deer.
Because they could perceive his consciousness. He wasn't seeing men, women, a desire, attraction, sex. He wasn't seeing like that. He was just seeing spirit, soul, like that. So they could see that there's no threat, there's no danger. This 16-year-old attractive naked male can see us naked, because he's not really seeing us naked. It doesn't matter to him. But when his father Vyasadeva came by, immediately they covered up. which is interesting because Vyasadeva is still a pure devotee. He wrote all of the Vedas, all of the scripture that we have today was compiled by Vyasadeva.
Considered literary incarnation of the supreme person, you know?
Right. So Samir says, thanks for answering. Interesting.
Yeah, and he was kind of like perturbed. He's like, hey, how come, like, why is the treatment different? They were like, well, he's not making any distinction. The treatment, you know, he's like,
Vyasadeva
how come he gets different treatment? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, you were fine. How come, like, what happened? And he's like, well,
really? I didn't know this part of the story.
Yeah, he asks, he's like, what's the difference? And then they said, you know, he's not making any distinctions, but you are. So
oh well. Right.
Yeah. So and to that point, I think it's really important that we know ourselves in our spiritual path.
Yeah.
One quote that I really, really love is there's just one section where Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, what will repression accomplish?
Yes.
And I think that that's a huge thing that one line, if we remember anything, we should remember that Krishna says, what will repression accomplish? So, and that's not to say like the basest of desires. Like, you know, it's like, what if I want to go rob somebody? It's like, you don't really have the desire to go rob somebody. Usually you have the desire or the necessity for money or something that this person has. There's a desire for security that goes deeper than just the base actions. But right. I feel like we should know ourselves. We should know who we are, and we should take those opportunities to be real with ourselves and authentic. Even if we're not authentic with anybody else, we should be truthful with ourselves and with Krishna, because there's no sense in hiding, and there's no way we're going to progress on the spiritual path if we're not at least honest with ourselves.
This is such a beautiful point. Really, really, really. So important. And as someone grown up in a spiritual institutional environment, I feel like it's so hard to do sometimes. And I'm not trying to badmouth the spiritual institution that I grew up in. I feel like this is just the nature of anyone, the human nature on a spiritual path in general. It's human nature to want to hide our defects, deny our defects, our faults, present ourselves as something that we're not. Whatever it is, it's not just, but I've seen it a lot, and it's something I've been personally trying to understand and come to terms with. Where am I actually at? How do I actually feel about this? Do I agree with these social norms? Can I be honest about this part of my life that's real and happening that most people externally, socially would sneer at, or whatever it might be? How do you balance that? How do you be genuine, sincere? So important to be honest with ourselves. And if we can, find people who we trust, who we can be honest with as well, to reveal ourselves to in confidence, in those loving exchanges.
Yeah. And so this point about Vyasadeva making distinctions, he wasn't actually looking at these apsaras with any kind of desire. It was simply the distinction of male body and female body. And so for them, that was enough for them to show respect and say, I can acknowledge you as an elder. I can acknowledge you as a person who sees a distinction between male and female bodies. And then they cover up just to honor that distinction that he's also making. So it's not as though he wasn't looking at them in any kind of way. And so sometimes you might think, you know, but I'm a person who also makes distinctions. Like, I'm not seeing everybody equally. Where does that put me? But Vyasadeva is also self-realized and able to perfect his life. No problem. Shukadeva Goswami doesn't make any distinctions and is also able to perfect his life. Arjuna is a warrior, married, children, grandchildren, wealth, all kinds of things. He's got abilities. He's handsome. He's not scrawny. He's got muscles. He works out.
He ain't
Where
shy
does that
about it.
leave? I'm saying, like, right, exactly. He's got an arrogance,
He's not shy about
that's
it.
that's part of his job. Like, his job is to not be shy about it.
Yeah.
His job is to protect others, but also kind of he shows off. It's also part of what he does. And so where does that leave a person like that? If we're honest, you can still perfect your life because Arjuna is able to do it. The Pandavas are able to do it. They're able to rule the world and still perfect their lives.
This is also why what we're doing right now is so important, which is to read and discuss what we read.
Yeah.
Churn what you're hearing, because it's very easy to misunderstand things. And we see often misunderstandings and misapplications of spiritual ideas, concepts, truths, which are meant to be understood in a certain way. You can understand things, even spiritual literature, you understand it through your own lens. So we can understand through the 3 different modes of nature, right? Goodness, passion, and ignorance, which means I can read the Gita, and if I'm reading it through my own lens of ignorance without any external support to help me understand it properly, I might see something in here that causes me to behave in a way that this was not intended to do. And we've seen it in the past where people end up doing all kinds of ridiculous things in the name of religion or spirituality, quoting things from scripture. This is why, and they've completely misunderstood it. So this discussion with like-minded people, and ideally, if we can find someone who is fully realized this information, fully realized and is living these teachings directly in their life, that's how we're going to get the real essence out of it.
And I think that's a really cool point, because that kind of harkens back to one of Samir's earlier questions. And that's a question that I get a lot. People are like, but what if I don't have a guru? What do I do? You know, what am I supposed to, like, how is it? Does this mean that there's no hope for me? Does this mean I have to go like run out and attach myself to the first spiritually minded person I see? No. The wonderful thing is, Srila Prabhupada, he said, you can associate with me at any time you want. You pick up these books, and if you read with a sincere heart, Krishna knows. Like, you can't cheat a cheater. Like, Krishna is a great trickster. Krishna is a great finder of loopholes and all these different things. So he knows. He knows when we're being sincere. And what he says is, he's going to reciprocate no matter what. So if we are reading in a spirit of really finding truth and finding those self-realized souls and spiritual companions and teachers, Krishna reciprocates. Sometimes from within, as what they call Chaitya Guru, or the guru within the heart, Paramatma. Sometimes then that manifests outwardly. And we can see it in our daily lives. We're going along. We've had a little conversation with God, sometimes irreverently. And then next thing you know, somebody comes and they say something that is exactly the answer to what you were internally talking about, that they could have never known about, ever. And in that moment, and it doesn't mean that it has to be forever and ever, but in that moment, that person can be a spiritual guru. Like, whoa, that was a truth I heard there. Cool. Which just, goes to show how and why it's so important to be able to give respect to others.
Yeah.
Because at any moment, our supreme person can speak through anyone. At any time, like those truth bombs can happen at any moment. And basically it's based off of the sincerity of our hearts. The more sincere we are, the more Krishna is like, no problem, I'll reciprocate. I'll come talk to you. However you want to come find me, he's like, I'll meet you right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful point. There's a couple questions come in, nice questions. We'll just go through. Samir has asked, do the plenary portions and expansions such as Ram or Vyas and Vyas and Parashuram in particular, Do they know that they're avatars? Or is it just Krishna who knows? Do you know? I don't even know the answer to that. I don't know if you know.
For some of them, they are avatars in the sense that
They're inspired.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the way Srila Prabhupada explains it, which I really enjoy, like those Shakti Avesha avatars. They get the Shakti for a
It's Krishna's
particular
Shakti.
function.
Yeah.
Right. So
But
it's
they're
like
still
they
jivas.
borrowed. So they borrowed, and even especially in the case of Parshuram, he borrows for a particular purpose and a particular time, and then he actually gives that Shakti back to Lord Ram.
Mm.
And he has a very long life, and he has all of these incredible qualities, but he also knows, like he gives that Shakti back to Lord Ram. Like he's like, okay, what I needed to do is done. The purpose of my whole manifestation has been fulfilled. Here you go. Lord Ram is in a totally different category, which kind of goes into why we celebrate Ram Navami so heavily and why we celebrate Nrsimha Chaturdasi so heavily. You ever wonder that? It's like there's so many incarnations, but we celebrate like Lord Ram and Lord Nrsimhadev a lot.
That's true. I never wondered that.
So I did, because I was like, we don't celebrate everybody. Like the fasting is intense, like it's longer than most. Like what just, so what they say is Shri Krishna, he has all qualities, opulences in full, and he exhibits them in full. The Vishnu expansions, that also they express those opulences the fullest, not quite as much as Krishna, but almost, are Lord Ram and Lord Nrsimha, which is why we worship them so intensely within our own Bhakti Gaudiya tradition.
This sounds, because I could go off on this, but this sounds like a sidebar, but it's interesting about Nrsimhadev. I'm almost surprised to hear that he falls into the same category like Ram like that. I mean, I'm not, because it's Nrsimhadev, but at the same time, there are some obvious differences, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One's really mild. One's really angry. Like,
yeah, well, half lion. It's not even just a full human form, right?
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest one in my head. That's interesting that he's put in the same category.
It's about the way that they express their different shaktis and their different energies, and they're able to express them in such a way that's almost close to Krishna, which I always thought was very cool. Seeing as Krishna is so charming and so wonderful. So awesome.
Okay, this next question is really thoughtful. I like this next question. It comes in from Raphael.
Yeah.
Do you want to read it?
Sure. So we have the three realizations of the Supreme, right? Brahman, Paramatman, Bhagavan. But what does each realization practically look like in daily life? How does someone in Brahman realization see the world? How does someone in Paramatma realization see the world, etc.? Which these are the kinds of questions that Arjuna asks. Like he's like, what does that look like? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they sit? How do they go on,
Yeah.
And so Krishna begins to really explain what that looks like. For Brahman realization, the most far away view, I don't want to do it in levels of low and high, because then it kind of feels a little bit like, like categorically, it kind of just depends on your natural proclivity. And for some people, their natural proclivity is to go closer. And for some people, their natural proclivity is kind of like stand in the back. You ever see people, they arrive at the temple for the first time. Some people go real up close to the deities. Some people kind of just stand in the back, take things in for a while. So for the impersonalist, which they tend to get a bad rap a lot of the time with bhakti yogis, for the impersonalist, it's like looking at the sunshine. And Srila Prabhupada uses this analogy a lot, right? Sunshine, sun planet, sun god. So you've got the sunshine. Everybody can see the sunshine. It's shining. You can experience it. You had the beach experience, right? Like this sun
was
is,
epic.
it's on means. And he's like, but it's over here.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this feature of this universal form of the Lord, this consciousness, right? Understanding now that there seems to be a source which is not disconnected, and everyone's connected to that source. Wow, amazing. And so that's kind of like that impersonal Brahman realization. The pitfall of Brahman realization is Srila Prabhupada uses the term, they get insecure in their realization because they're kind of looking at it as this far back thing. Everybody's connected. There's a source, but there's no real interaction. So there's no reciprocation. So what Srila Prabhupada says happens is they get a little insecure and they want some interaction because everybody's looking for some interaction. There's this love and be loved, serve and be served. There's a whole interaction. And so what Srila Prabhupada says is that no one stays in the Brahman effulgent. So we have the effulgence of the Supreme Person, which is this Brahman realization. No one stays there for very long because there's no interaction. So they go searching for interaction, which inevitably, he says, brings them back to the material world where they perform philanthropic things. So you'll see a lot of like activists and philanthropic workers and so many people trying to do great things for society. And it's coming out of this wonderful quality that everyone is with this collective consciousness. But sometimes there's a yearning naturally in the heart of the soul to go further and want some interaction. Then we have a Paramatma realization, right? So we have this realization of the Supreme Person seated within the heart, within every living entity. So what does that look like? How does that person walk, talk, act? This is the person that sees dog and dog eater, elephant, sage, with no distinction, because what they're now seeing is this spark of God within everyone, right? So that's kind of like looking at the sun planet, understanding now, just a deeper understanding. And it's not to say like, if you're 5 and you're like, there's the sunshine, it's like, oh, that kid's so wrong about life. It's like, no, it's one understanding. And then you go deeper and then somebody says, okay, but there's a whole like ball of fire. There's a whole planet behind it. According to Vedic astrology, it's a whole planet inhabited with people who are able to withstand the heat of that planet.
I mean, which makes sense. Just sorry, because we live on an Earth planet made up of primarily water. What are our bodies made of? Primarily water. So maybe not so far out to sea. There's a fire planet. There might be bodies up there, maybe made out of primarily fire. That probably might sound stupid to some people, but to me it makes sense.
But you know what? Like,
think about it outside of the box.
It totally doesn't. You know, like it's like saying, I don't believe in astrology. And it's like, so, but everybody acknowledges, even doctors, that if you get a full moon, it throws women into labor. It changes the tides of a woman's body, like changes hormone levels and does all kinds of crazy, like doctors, everybody acknowledges the whole thing. It's like, I don't believe in astrology. It's like, I think you kind of do a little bit. So yeah. I remember when I went to the doctor, and my lung doctor was like, do you have asthma? I said, no, my lungs are fine. He's like, well, how's your breathing? You ever like, he started like naming things. I'm like, yeah, happens all the time. He's like, so you kind of do have asthma. I was like, oh, good to know. So yeah, you know, it's like saying, you know, I don't believe in astrology, but also recognizing that if the sun goes away, we all go away. And you know, nobody can really last very long without the moon. Like there's problems that occur without the planets in orbit. So we gotta kind of do. So yeah, this is the Paramatma feature, is now realizing that, okay, wait, now there's this collective consciousness, but it goes deeper than that. Each one of us, we have the spark and the splendor of this divine person. now we've got this situation, like you said, it's not just like, okay, we're living on this planet primarily made up of water, but now we also have these qualities, minute quantity, but we have these qualities. It's like we're getting to this stage. But still, the interaction can be a little bit overshadowed by our own thoughts, desires, conditionings, coverings. And then you get to the Bhagavan realization, this God that is full of opulences, this person. So it's like looking at the sun God. To break it down even further, right? Like, say you've heard of an apple. Okay, I've heard of an apple. Cool. That to me is like this Brahman realization. I've heard of some things, heard about it. Then you can see an apple. Okay, it has some quality, it has some form. But somebody who's tasted an apple, and an apple's like their favorite thing, and they describe it to you, no. It's got a crunch, and it's got this juice that comes out. It's got like all this stuff. Or, because apples are, I feel like they've made their way around the world. Explaining to somebody a mango, right? Like,
Right.
oh, but a ripe mango. And then the mango, you don't even have to cut it open. For specific mangoes, if you just kind of massage it and you make a little hole in the skin, you can essentially suck up all of the best of this mango juice without even cutting it. That to me is like this Bhagavan realization. You could hear of a mango, then you could see a mango. You're like, oh, that's a mango, huh? Okay, cool. But then you get the experience from somebody who knows what it's like to see and touch and taste a mango. This is this Bhagavan realization where you've got a supreme person who is filled with personality and charm and qualities, and he does things and says things in a particular way, smiles in a particular way. And then you get a person who's experienced a relationship with that person. This is the amazingness of having a spiritual teacher or a guru, somebody who's actually like, wait, but you gotta talk to this guy. And this is what I kind of love even about philosophers like Rumi. You get Islam, which is not so much on having this personal realization, this personal relationship with the Supreme. It's on reverence, like, God is God, you are you. You guys should just, and then you get somebody like Rumi, or you get Rumi's teacher, and you've got these people and they're like, wait a second. But I think that there's this overwhelming lover and beloved relationship happening where this supreme person just loves you like nobody else. And somehow experiencing that is the best experience I've ever had in my life. I have to chase it with everything that I've got. I mean, there's a reason that Rumi is now quoted even today. I mean, now primarily for like breakups, but like it was originally about this greater relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what it looks like for us now.
That was a freaking epic explanation. Beautiful. Thank you. And I love that just to pick up on the last point, which I know was a throw-in comment. It wasn't the full question, but I love that you referenced Rumi and even how, because I love this about spirituality. As you start to become more conscious, perhaps, this is at least my understanding, as you become more conscious in your God consciousness, you become less God, I'm really struggling with my words today. What is the word? You become less
narrow-minded.
And there's a word for it. And I even made a whole freaking long post about this last year. We're very, when you're into your own thing and you judge the other religion or the other person, narrow-minded.
Yeah, if you ask me, that's like secular. The definition. I feel like it is. That's so the definition of secular. And, Srila Prabhupada makes this point that Bhakti Yoga is so non-secular. He's like, it's going to bother me. You go find it.
Anyway, it's just it's very open-minded is the point, is that you can appreciate that person. They're Muslim, but yo, that guy's got something going on, something real. That person's a Christian, but yo, that person, they got something real happening right now. You can see it. This person's a Hare Krishna. They got something real happening. There's a real freaking connection happening right now.
Yeah.
And this is advanced spiritual consciousness. And you see it. I notice it to be true when I look at any faith. You see there are those who are focused on the externals and are very close-minded and judge other people and say, I'm right, you're wrong, end of story. And then there are also those who have gone deeper and seen a greater truth and come to realize, wait a second, no, that's not the full picture here. There's more. And it just makes sense when you're thinking about God, this overriding all this umbrella figure for the entire creation, cosmic creation, can't be that freaking narrow-minded. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I still can't think of the word. Dang it.
I remember when I was younger and I would hear
sectarian
about different... Say it again.
Sectarian.
Hey, sectarian. Thank you. Yes. Non-sectarian. That is the word.
Non-sectarian. We can be so sectarian sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. That is the word.
That is the word. That's the word. I remember now, did a long Facebook post about it in my 3-month Facebook stint that I had last year.
It was a good stint. I think, give yourself every year, give yourself like a 3-month stint where you do, and then you take the rest of the time off, and then you get ready for your next 3 months stint next year. Because I appreciated it.
Yeah, no, I love the encouragement. Thank you.
But yeah, and that's exactly what it is. And that's why I didn't want to put like Brahman and Paramatma and Bhagavan realization in terms of higher or lower, because I feel like all of those realizations are important in making us non-sectarian.
Yeah.
Right. This Brahman realization of understanding that there is a full consciousness that is permeating through everyone and everything. It's so important for us then to realize that, oh, wait, but everybody has got a spark of this divine splendor within them, which is, for me, I remember hearing about other faiths and hearing about how many people were going to hell. And my question was always like, but what about the people before Jesus? Because we only 2,000 years in. Like, what about the people before Jesus? And they're like, no, because Jesus said, only he is the way and the truth and the light. And I was like, I know he said that, but I don't think he meant it like that, because what about the people that came before him? I don't think that my loving God would just be like, sorry, you guys are just SOL. You're out of luck. I can't help you, And then my question was always like, what about the people who are like in the Philippines and they don't speak English and they haven't been attacked by the colonizers who are also going to bring a different religion? Like, how do they get saved? And the answer from Christians was like, they won't. And I was like, you mean to tell me a God made a whole earth specifically so those people wouldn't be like, something about that feels so sad.
And then on top of that, hell is eternal.
Yeah. So then I was just like, but something's not quite adding up. And I can understand inconceivable. And sometimes inconceivable is like, whoo, yeah. But so Samir's like, they say in an early age, worshiping Jehovah was the way, but Jehovah's Witnesses say there's only like 130,000 spots in heaven. There are more people in New York. There are more people in the small town in New York where I live.
What? Is that true?
Yeah.
Not about New York, about heaven from the Jehovah's Witness perspective. Really? Wow. That's interesting. But wait, there have been more than that who have already gone then. What about these?
That's my problem.
What about these guys and gals? The ones who are still
Okay,
here.
let's see. Right? How many Jehovah's Witnesses go to heaven? 144,000.
Huh. Okay.
And that, so see, so my you know, my sister's like, you know, they're out there preaching door to door a lot. I wouldn't be preaching because some of y'all gonna take my spot, and I can't. If there's only 144,000, then some of y'all want to take my spot, and I don't like it. Yeah.
Wow. That
So
seems it's so weird. It almost feels like maybe there's something that we've not quite got.
Right. So
There.
that would baffle
Maybe there's something else
my
to
mind.
that. Surely, come on, that can't be the understanding. That seems so weird.
I don't know. It just made me dive deeper into bhakti with such gratitude.
I mean, for sure that this is the thing about God consciousness, and it's a shame in so many ways. And this is why I love what you're doing, that you're really trying hard to talk openly, publicly about Krishna consciousness, because the mainstream spiritual concepts and understandings that currently exist, you see these debates on you. I watch a lot of YouTube. That's how I waste time. So occasionally you come across debates and Christians and Muslims on the street talking, or someone will be, an atheist will be questioning someone, and then you'll see, yeah, atheist destroys Christian, yeah, or something like that,
Yeah.
or Christian destroys atheist, and then there'll be some kind of interaction where one person looks like they won. But a lot of them, when an atheist is presenting their questions, they don't get answered. They don't get answered.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see why people think, well, if that's the answer, that doesn't make sense to me. Nah, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. It doesn't make sense. But there are answers, yo. That makes sense. Got to think about it, but they're logical answers.
Well, you know, I like bhakti yoga because at every step, when I ask Krishna a question, he never fails to answer it. He's always like, okay. And the answer might be a long time coming, but if you continue to ask sincerely with a submissive heart, like, really, Lord, I just kind of want to know, like, have you set up something for these people? Like, what happens? And then you hear about things like, you know, fasting on Ekadashi. And there are people who just naturally don't eat a certain day, and it's by accident. And then the Lord's like, yeah, and I took that and it was fine. And I'm like, you decided to accept that as they don't even know you. He's like, I know, it's great.
So I like sleeping in Vrindavan.
Right? Yeah, right. You can make spiritual progress. You just go to sleep. It's okay. Yeah. And so I really appreciate that I have such a caring and compassionate Lord on my side.
Yeah.
Who really tries really, really hard not to smite people. Like, he tries.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not to say that there aren't individuals or groups of people within other faiths that get this too. There are. But we see a predominating, the predominating number of people lean toward those, what you might, I don't know.
It's the polarities. Yeah. It's like the polars that have these stark, harsh distinctions. And I feel like, I'm like, but did you read what Jesus said? Because that guy, he was all about the love and the compassion and the it's okay. He was all about the abandon all varieties and just surrender. He was all about that message. And he was like, listen, and rightfully so, Srila Prabhupada also calls him Shakti Avesha Avatar, you know, like the question, do they, yeah, like, so, you know, that question, do they know? Sometimes they do acknowledge. And so even Jesus, he's like, yeah, but I can acknowledge that I have some empowerment, but I can also acknowledge that there's a greater empowerment. Like, he's like, guys, can you just focus on the fact that, let me break this down for you. I've had the mango, okay? Like,
yeah.
There's a mango tree where I'm from, and they're so ripe. And everybody's like, but you, the gardener of the mango tree, That's it. I'm gonna focus on the gardener. He's like, no, there's a mango tree.
Yeah.
And with all this fruit. He's like, listen, I'm trying to tell you about the fruit. And they're like, but the gardener, you are
It's like,
awesome.
it's like if someone came and said, Jesus says, follow me, guys, follow me. I'm gonna take you to the garden of the mango trees. And then someone else comes down a couple weeks later, also knows where the mango trees are, and says, yo, guys, follow me. I'm gonna take you to the mango trees. And no, Jesus said, follow me. So that means
To the mango tree
I
specifically.
can't
No one else.
follow you, because he said,
That's right. And
follow
also, no one else
me.
can know about mango trees ever.
Exactly. I was just thinking, and I anyway, I'm not going to say it, but it was yeah, I love this point. I love this point.
Yeah. So I think in every single
Oh, Samir,
religion.
are you kidding me? I'm falling asleep. It's 2 a.m. here. Oh, you're in India.
Man. My gosh.
Where are you tuning in from, Samir? Thank you for staying up to listen to this. I don't believe it. Wow.
Thank you.
That's very cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think every religion, at heart, religion just also is a word that means to connect, you know, like, so at its essence, every religion is just trying to connect us back with what everybody's searching for. Everybody's trying to figure out, like, everybody wants this desire to find some acceptance, to find some form of loving someone and being loved, whether it's platonic, whether it's like, everybody has this. Wow. How cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Jai.
So yeah, everybody has this desire to try and interact, to try and love and be loved, to try and have this compassionate connection. And so there's no cap on how many people can realize the Supreme Person, nor is there a cap on where the Supreme Person, like Srila Prabhupada has said so many times, there are unlimited forms of Krishna and they've made their appearance everywhere on earth. It's just up to us to uncover them.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Right? So isn't it would be so much more interesting, instead of trying to go and reform or convert, to go into other cultures and try and find our friend. What does my friend look like here? How has my friend appeared here?
This is it. Swan-like thinking. Swan-like thinking. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls it. The swan-like mentality.
Finding the milk.
Yeah, or the fly. The fly looks for the shit.
Yeah.
Fly's always looking for the shit. Right?
And it's going to find it. It's really good at finding it. Like,
yeah, they love it. They love it. Little weirdos. And so we can be like the fly, always looking for the shit, always looking how to criticize and compare and judge. We can be like the swan, or the bee, maybe the bee looking for the honey, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls it a swan-like mentality, where they actually, they're appreciating the beauty. You go past the church, a mosque, you say, look how beautifully these people are worshiping my love. You go past the church, look how beautifully these people are connecting and worshiping my love. Past where the Jews worship?
Temple.
In a temple as well. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Yeah. And this consciousness as well. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No. I was saying I want to try and cultivate that thinking of non-sectarian spirituality, where I love Krishna so much. And that's the thing about this Bhagavan realization. What does a person look like with that absolute Supreme Person realization? That's what Krishna says. You see me everywhere. Me specifically. And I'm never lost to you, nor are you ever lost to me. That person with that Bhagavan realization of the Supreme Person, this Supreme Person is my best friend. then they see me everywhere. They can find their best friend anywhere.
Yeah. And this type of thinking is, in one sense, this is the cure to our human problems right now.
Yeah.
Because we're so sectarian in every way, and we are always out for ourselves to, I win, you lose. And this is generally the nature of the world that we see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it causes so many problems. If we developed a mentality, that sounds simple, but if we developed the vision, this Krishna conscious vision, that we're all just trying to please Krishna, and look, here's my brother, here's my sister doing the same thing as me so beautifully. How can I support them in doing this service? And then that mentality leaks down into even just mundane daily activities. We're not competing with each other, we're supporting each other. Once you start to switch over to this mindset of, see what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. And, funny enough, as you were
probably
talking,
say it better than me. I'm struggling with my words today, Acyuta.
I hate to tell you, but it's kind of planetary.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you understand astrology?
Planetarily.
Do you do it?
I kind of follow it, because how could you not? I live my life by the phases of the moon, and I fast on every 11th moon day. So
okay, yeah. I wasn't fine. Yeah. I wasn't sure if you meant as a woman there either, by the way, because Sundari.
I mean, all of the above. Yeah, all of the above. I'm always kind of like, what's happening? But so ironically, I just kind of read that today it's like Mercury it's like coursing through Sagittarius, and Mercury is not happy there. And Mercury rules communication. So if you're having a hard time with words, you're probably not the only one. There's a lot of people having a hard time with words today. Communication.
How are you doing so well?
I'm probably not. No.
Protecting you.
I pray and just praying a lot. No, but yeah. So like this, when you were talking about this line of thinking, I was just sitting here going, oh my God. I feel like every time I turn around, Krishna's like, there's a book idea. And so, you have all those like book ideas, like think like a man. It's like relationship guides for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And this one is like, think like a child. Because Prahlad Maharaj said it best. And he was 5. He was just like, he's like, this whole world. And it helps me not to feel so bad about the state of things today. Because we do that a lot. Today, things are horrible. Today's age, it's all terrible. Yeah. And Prahlad was yugas
easy
ago.
To feel like that today as well.
Right? Yeah. Because everybody's focused on what's happening to me right now. Yeah. But Prahlad, he was saying, he's like, this whole existence is working on the basis of this is my enemy and this is my friend. And there's no in between. Everything is polarizing. And so developing a more childlike thought process, where the children at a certain point, they don't necessarily have to think this is my friend and this is my enemy, nor does it have to be the same tomorrow. Like, you ever get kids? I'm like, you were just fighting yesterday. We're best friends today. We made friendship bracelets. Like, it's fine. We threw it all out the window. It doesn't hold water today. Yeah. That childlike mentality would serve us all really well, especially in looking at the instructions of little 5-year-old Prahlad saying, but if we could just see that everybody is a friend of the Supreme Person, and even if it means like I'm not at that point where they could be my friend, but that's a friend of my friend, it would change us all so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Think like a child.
That's a great idea for a book, Acyuta.
It's meditations on the instructions of Prahlad Maharaj. Whew.
Is it in the making already?
Now it is. It came up in my mind, so now it is.
Amazing! Wow, there we go. You heard it here.
I'm gonna write it down,
guys.
I'm gonna write it down as soon as this podcast is over. I'm gonna write it down so I don't forget it.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to reading it, Acyuta.
Don't know. Thanks for, being part of the inception of this,
Yeah,
this whole
yeah.
idea.
You heard it here first, guys. Think Like a Child by Acyuta Gopi.
Hey.
So I'm aware that you are with people as well.
Yeah.
You got things going on. You got a life happening, Acyuta, which is very cool. You have a cool life. And so we're going for a good hour and a half today. There's been some fantastic topics of discussion, some nice interaction as well. And we've made it through in good old similar fashion to how we normally do. We've made it through one or two more verses today than normal. It looks like we got to verse 12. No, we're pretty much on track of how we've been doing. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to get to the halfway point of this chapter at some point.
This coming. Yeah. This chapter's how many? It's not the longest chapter, in fairness.
No, it's not. Can you imagine if we had the longest chapter?
If we... It would take us a year, probably more.
Yeah.
It would probably take us more than a year.
It's probably good that I'm not the one for like chapter 18.
Chapter 18 is the long one, huh? It's true, it is. Huh?
Two is long and 18 is long, but
that's right. Yeah, 2 and 18. They head up to 70 odd. Yeah. Okay, well, it's really been an absolute pleasure. Acyuta, thank you so much for another amazing episode, and thank you for taking the time out of your day, because I know you've got lots of cool things happening in your life right now.
This is the best usage of my time, quite literally. I mean, there's a pool somewhere where there are children at a pool, but actually diving, into the pool like nectar that is Bhagavad Gita, I won today. Okay, I'm winning.
My girl. Thank you, Acyuta. And we'll see you again here in the same place in 2 weeks' time for our next episode, where we'll pick up from where we left off today. So come and join us there, Samir. Thank you for staying up so late. Leishfree, wonderful to see you listening through the whole thing. That's the kind of thing that's going on. Yeah, Jai, thank you for that. And big love. We'll see you next time. Bye, Acyuta.
Bye. See you guys.